Hi everyone, Neil Wilcoxon here. Today I'm going to be talking about the Nexus 5. And I'm not going to be talking about this as if it's a new device because it certainly isn't. This device is almost 2 years old. I've had one for almost a year and a half. There's a lot of new devices out there and they're great, but I just want to see, how this stacks up to the current competition. So if you already have one, maybe that can help you make a decision about whether you should hang on to it, get a new phone, maybe wait a couple more months to see if anything else comes out. So the first thing I want to cover, notes that I've got right here on the Nexus 5, is that this is running the latest version of Android right now. So that is 5.1.1 as of this video, and it looks like Android M is going to be coming to the Nexus 5 as well, because they do have a developer preview out, and I don't see the sense in them making a developer preview if they're not going to come out with the actual version. It could be frustrating if you have to wait around a long time like we did with the Lollipop update. But in comparison to other devices, the Nexus 5 actually got it much faster than phones such as the Samsung Galaxy series, the HTC One, all those other phones out there that have a whole other step to go through to get that update approved. They took even longer to get it. So now I want to talk about sort of the hardware design. On the Nexus 5, the design is pretty modern. The display extends almost to the edges of the device, and that's something we're seeing on phones coming out, especially from LG with their new G4. They're actually very similar in design. So the Nexus 5 design, I'd say, is holding up pretty well. Now I want to talk about the camera. Now, when the Nexus 5 came out, people hated on the camera, and that is still true. The camera sucks, even compared to a camera phone from 2 years ago. It's really just not an acceptable camera. And if you're going to take any pictures, other than for reference where you're going to delete the picture right away, yeah, definitely bring a different camera if you still have the Nexus 5. Now I wanted to talk about a couple of things that I've experienced owning this device, which I plan on keeping for like a full 2 years, because that does seem like about the time when your phone just can't take it anymore. And I'll keep you guys updated whether that's the case. So let's talk about a couple of things that I've seen the phone sort of wear out over time. So the first thing is the physical wear. It's not that bad on the front, actually, that being glass. Scratching is minimal. I'm pretty careful with my phones, but I've definitely used it, that's for sure. The back is where a lot of problems come in, because as you can see here, the letters have actually started to fall off where it says Nexus on the back. So that was kind of annoying because, you'd like take it out of your pocket, it's a slightly warmer day or whatever, and you'd have this like glue running out of where the letters are, and you have like letter pieces that get stuck to your fingers. That was really a design flaw. Maybe the later on Nexuses that were produced by Google of the same model, the Nexus 5, maybe those were better because they did make some updates, but certainly if you got one that was in one of the early batches, this is going to be a problem. There's also a lot of scratching here, and as you can see on the bottom where the speaker hole is, there's a lot of dirt in there, and that design really just promoted that happening because it wasn't that great of a design. Another thing I'd like to talk about is the battery life. When the Nexus 5 first came out, people were very uncertain about the battery, and that is still the case. Most days I'll be able to make it through, but particularly if you're using this on T-Mobile, their network definitely takes a lot more power draw no matter what phone you're using. So if you're using the Nexus 5 with T-Mobile, you should definitely have a power source available during the day to make sure if you run out of battery. It happens quite a few days for me. Actually, I tried to solve this problem by putting a new battery into the Nexus 5, and that's what created these issues around the edges where the back cover doesn't exactly stay on, because I broke some clips. That's kind of due to my carelessness, but also due to the design and the fact that it has something breakable when you're trying to open it up. So basically what I did, went on Amazon, bought a battery. I'll leave a link down in the description for that. The battery did seem to improve, so I think the battery was starting to get worn out when I was using the old one. But I feel like this newer battery probably didn't have as many cycles on it, since it is a third-party battery and it's starting to get worn out again. So just how many cycles you go through on the charging does become an issue, because you probably, if you're a more than light user, you're probably going to be charging this thing twice a day, and that definitely does put more cycles on the battery. In terms of other problems that I've had with the Nexus 5, network connectivity has always been an issue. Part of it is T-Mobile to blame, that their network technology isn't quite as good at getting inside of buildings and stuff like that. So that's part of the issue. But also the Nexus 5, compared to other phones I've had, is very slow to grab onto the network. When you've been out of signal and you're back, but you're not showing any bars yet, that takes a long time. Also, I've had issues with Wi-Fi. Again, not all the networks are supported, it seems like. I've got 2 wireless networks in my house, one that's directly connected to that cable modem, and that one seems to work fine because there's a nicer router there, but it seems like a lot of cheaper wireless network devices, this thing had trouble maintaining a connection to. And it's not to say that other electronics haven't also been having problems, but it's kind of mixed results whether on a given day it's going to be able to connect, because some days it works just fine, others days it doesn't. So I don't know if that's the Nexus 5's fault, but I've had other devices working just fine at the same time. And one final issue that I've had having this device for a year and a half is definitely whenever you have something that you use every single day and you have it for a year and a half, you just get bored of it, This phone, I'm really used to it, and that's great, but I'm the kind of person that likes something new every once in a while. And holding on to something for so long just gets boring. Now, something I want to cover is the specs of the Nexus 5 compared to modern smartphones. It's definitely fallen behind, and I can't say that all of these benchmarks or the specs directly translate to, ease of use or things loading quickly. There's a lot of other factors that play into that, but the specs are definitely a starting place. And it is true that if you go too low, things really do start to slow down. So I'm just going to do a little bit of reading here, put some specs up on the screen, just for comparison. So now for the specs of the Nexus 5, it has a Snapdragon quad-core processor running at 2.3 gigahertz, and that received a Geekbench single-core score of 820. Let's compare that to a modern smartphone, the Samsung Galaxy S6. That has a quad-core Cortex A53 and another quad-core, so that'll make it 8 cores total, Cortex A57. The lower powered processor, the Cortex A53, is 1.5 gigahertz, where the quad-core Cortex A57 is the 2.1 gigahertz clock speed. And using that device, Geekbench gives it a score of 1152. I'd also like to give a comparison to the LG G4, which has a hexa-core Snapdragon 808 1.8 gigahertz processor, and that got a Geekbench score of 1120. So as you can see, the Nexus 5 is starting to fall behind some other modern smartphones, but that doesn't necessarily directly translate to not being able to use the device. So that's why I want to be cautious about basing everything entirely on the specs and the benchmarks, because there are other factors that play into it. For example, Samsung Galaxy devices known for having a lot of extra software running in the background on there. So, day to day, Nexus 5, I haven't had any problems with things lagging behind or anything like that. Android definitely does have its issues where, sometimes like weird freak problem, it just doesn't work out. But most days I won't have any problem navigating around the device. And that has really impressed me, considering my old devices, such as the Droid Bionic. They were just so laggy, and you'd have to reboot every day and set it up to auto reboot. That's just not the case anymore, even with the Nexus 5 and certainly other smartphones. So Nexus 5 is definitely comparable in that respect. One last thing that I wanted to check out when deciding whether to ditch the Nexus 5 or stick with it for a couple more months, was to compare which features are missing compared to other smartphones that are on the market today. So some things that it does have, the Nexus 5, it does have NFC and wireless charging. The Nexus 5 also has LTE, but it does lack band 12. So if you're using T-Mobile and T-Mobile happen to use that band in your area, other bands would still be available, but you would be losing out on that added capacity to get inside of buildings and stuff like that. Some other features that the Nexus 5 lacks, it doesn't have quick charge, which considering how fast the battery dies, that would be nice. Now, given the battery is small, it doesn't take like 5 hours to charge or anything, but it would be nice to have quick charge. Also, there's no active display. That's some features on like the Moto X and stuff like that, where the screen can use part of the display, you know, kind of light up the time whether you have any messages or not. That also helps save power. The Nexus 5 does not have that. Also, there's no fingerprint reader. I didn't really care about that too much, so I'm okay with that. So in conclusion, the Nexus 5 is barely keeping up with modern smartphones. Now, I'm not going to recommend that you go out and buy one today unless you're looking for something really basic. Google's not selling them anymore, so you would be buying used. And if it is used, you're going to run into all those problems that I'm having right now that I showed you earlier in the video. So I recommend if you need a smartphone right now, probably don't go for it. Go for, you know, a newer smartphone. OnePlus could be coming out with a model soon. Now, if you already have a Nexus 5 and it's not terribly destroyed, it's in pretty good working condition like mine is, you know, you might choose to do what I do and just wait with it for a couple more months and see, you know, what the new Galaxy Note looks like, new OnePlus phone, whatever other models are coming out. So with that, let me know down in the comments below what you're doing. Do you have a Nexus 5? Do you have a Samsung Galaxy S3? You know, what are you doing in terms of your phone? Maybe you're an iPhone person. I don't know. Let me know down below your experience. And also let me know if you want me to update you guys with the Nexus 5 a couple months down the road, you know. I will be looking to get a new phone before the end of the year, that's for sure, just because I get bored. But that's not to say that this isn't perfectly working fine as expected right now. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again soon with another video.